Hi, Brent Rollins here again with Spraylock Concrete Protection. Thank you for joining us. Today, we're going to be discussing jointing practices and what we can do to help reduce the appearance of random cracking in concrete. You know, I've been able to travel the entire world, been blessed actually to travel the world and talk to people about concrete and look at construction jobs and be part of those construction jobs. And one of the most common questions, or the most common question that I get asked is, why haven't we figured out how to keep concrete from cracking? Well, the answer is that we have in a way, and it starts with proper jointing practices. So drying shrinkage is the most common cause of random concrete cracking. Drying shrinkage is a fancy term for, hey, the concrete when it's first placed is at its greatest volume, and as it cures, hardens, and dries, water of convenience leaves the system, causing the concrete to shrink. When it leaves the system, the concrete shrinks. It's then restrained by the ground or by plumbing or corners or other things, and that restraint causes that concrete to develop tensile stresses. At an early age, concrete doesn't have much tensile strength at all, so then cracks form. Well, with jointing practices, if we cut joints properly, I'm talking about contraction joints. They're called contraction joints because they're made to have a place where the concrete will crack in a straight line instead of being random. When we cut those joints properly, we can reduce the chances of those unsightly random cracks. Now, there are other reasons for concrete cracking, like deflection over a beam, or chemical attack, or load failure, or settlement, base and subgrade failure, those kind of things. But drying shrinkage is the most common. And if we're going to cut joints and we want them to be active and working, then we have three things that we need to pay attention to. Number one is timing. Those joints need to be cut as soon as possible without raveling the joint as you're cutting it. In other words, if you cut it with a hand tool, it's fine. You can do it early. But if you have a early entry saw or conventional saw and you go to cut those joints, then you don't want them spalling apart as the saw moves through the concrete. But you want to do it as soon as you can without that happening. So often that's the same day, especially in the summertime. Now, secondly, you want to have the proper depth. ACI recommends about 1/4 to a half the depth of the slab as a depth for the joints to be cut. Now, that's important because anything less than that, and you might not get that vertical plane of weakness we're trying to get, where that tensile strength can take over and then crack the concrete where you want it to crack. So that depth's very important. Finally, spacing. You want to cut the joints close enough to where you don't have random cracks showing up between the joints. So ACI's recommendation there is no more than 2.5 times the depth in inches in feet. In other words, if you have a 4-inch deep slab, the most you want to have your joints spaced apart is 10 feet. And also, you don't want the ratio of one side of the panel that's formed to the other side being more than 1.5 to 1. So in other words, you don't want a 20-foot long by 10-foot long panel. You want as close to square as possible, so when it goes to shrink, it shrinks uniformly and those cracks form in the joints where you want them. Now, those are 3 quick tips on proper jointing practices. There are other types of joints other than contraction joints. There are isolation joints, construction joints, a few others. If you want to learn more, ACI or PCA are great resources for you. So, if you want to handle drying shrinkage cracking the way it should be handled, then be sure to cut your joints with the proper spacing, timing, and depth, and that'll give you the best chance of having a crack-free slab.